I'm Dolly Curtis, and today I'm visiting with Walter and Naiad Einsel at their wonderful home and studio in Westport. Hello, Naiad. Hi, Walter.
Dolly. Hi.
This is really an experience, I mean, to say the least.
Well, for us too.
And so where are we right now? I mean, in this gorgeous place.
Well, we're in my studio, and I built this about 20 years ago, and I've been working out here more or less ever since.
Is it very serene?
Most of the time.
Are you by yourself most of the time out here?
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes Naiad comes over to see how it's going. And I get nervous when she comes, and after a while, I relax, and then we have a chat.
That's funny that you'd make him nervous.
Well,
but I can understand that when
he doesn't want me to be critical. You know, he prefer approval, and I have that kind of eye that always goes right to the floor, you know, and I say, well, now, did you mean for that to do that? And I was like, yes, why do you ask? You know, and then I'll say, well, I thought maybe if it faced the other way. Yeah, but it's all congenial and all for the best, you know, to get the best result.
Well, maybe we better tell the audience what it is that you've been so well known for all these years, the two of you. So I'll start with Walter.
Yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed so many of the sculptures that you've done, and I don't know exactly what to call them. I know they move. Mm-hmm. I know they're made of many materials.
Well, I call them kinetic sculpture. And they're made of, as you say, many materials. Wood primarily, brass, copper, fabric sometimes.
But Walter, the thing about them is they have a wonderful sense of humor.
Yeah.
I mean, it must be coming from inside you. You must be looking at the world with that sense of humor.
Yes.
Because none of them look like you're taking it very seriously.
Right. Well, I take what I'm doing.
I'm sure you do.
He really is serious, and this sort of lightens his spirit, too. You know, it's
so you need to do this. You need to do this, in other words.
Mark Twain was a very serious writer when he was writing, but what came out was very humorous.
Right. Well, I see how well crafted they are. Mm-hmm. And all these different materials you use them with much master of the materials. So I know you're taking it very seriously, but I see the message that you're trying to portray to the people who look at them is to have to lighten up a little bit.
Right, and that's where I get my main inspiration is when I start with an idea. I get a lot of excitement out of that initial idea. And that's what propels me to keep at the work of producing it.
Certainly.
Yeah, to staying with it, because a lot of it's very painstaking. It takes
I know.
a lot of time.
You know, my textile work is very similar.
Right.
It's fun, though, when you originate the design, the idea, the whole thing behind it, but then you have to see it through.
Right. You have to gain the momentum.
Right. And many of the things that you've done, though, have topics that cover the Statue of Liberty or a political situation at the time, or are there any of these around that we could look at and maybe make them happen so we could let the audience know?
There just happens to be one right behind us.
Well, let's just try that one out.
Yeah. Well, here he is, Uncle Sam, and he was inspired by a trip Naiad and I took to the Air Force installation in Virginia. It was part of the Society of Illustrators program. And it was inspired by the Air Force action, but we're not realistic illustrators, so we don't do very realistic kind of representation. So this was inspired by the Uncle Sam Achieves Flight, which is USAF, U.S. Air Force.
Okay, Uncle Sam Achieves Flight,
right.
USAF. Oh, he really does that dance. Some of them are dangerous. He's really swimming or some wonderful thing, or he's flying, that's it.
Yes, right.
He's flying.
It's a form of whirligig, except most whirligigs are run by air, by the wind.
Right.
And he's motorized, as any good Air Force should be.
Now this is a nice material up here, Walter. You use brass, is that what's...
brass, and this
Fabric.
The fabric is Belgian linen that the wrong side of Belgian linen.
Okay, nothing but the best Belgian linen.
And this is brass and copper.
So it's very eclectic, lots and lots of different materials put together. And many times do you use found objects, or are you mostly making everything, making all the parts?
No, I include, there's a little brass doorknob inside here that's a counterweight for these weights that allow the wings.
You're really quite an engineer, aren't you? You're like many things in one.
Yes.
Because you have,
could say
right,
that,
you'd
right.
have to almost understand the whole industrial engineering,
Yes,
designing.
well, parts of it anyway, right.
And you two people always thought of just generally as a fine commercial illustrators. But there's so much more going on
Well,
here.
we do a lot of secondary things, you know, like we get assignments to do freelance work for magazines and newspapers and advertising and all. But this is our other side of just things that
Right,
don't
some of
have
the play.
deadlines, that are just for ourselves. Although over the years, the things that Walt did that have filled our house, people became aware of them and interested in them and wanted to acquire some of them. So some of the things Walt does on commission, and lately he's more interested in that sort of work than meeting deadlines in magazines.
They travel too, don't they, Walter? I was at Epcot. This is a few years back, and I think I saw a beautiful display of yours there.
Thank you. That was
That true?
Yes, that was for AT&T, and it wasn't a traveling exhibit, but I designed it for AT&T for over a period of 18 months, and built a scale model, and then took it to a production house where they reproduced it full size, 40 feet by 15.
I remember it was very large.
Yes, and then it was installed permanently in Epcot.
So there it is. It's at
It's been
Epcot.
there 10 years.
10
now.
years.
Yeah.
Well, I
And it
remember,
hasn't broken down.
because otherwise you'd have to go and do a little maintenance to some of these.
I don't have to do that.
Oh, they have a whole crew?
Yeah, Disney took
Disney
it
took
over,
over.
and so they maintain it. And it's a very complicated electronic equipment, so I didn't have to be involved in that.
Tell me about this other one that's right next to you. Can we come
Well-
over to it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really beautifully
This,
crafted.
thank you. This fellow is...
This is a toy, an adult toy.
yeah,
An adult toy?
Yes, I call them rolling eyes, just simply because that's what happens when you turn this. And the heart flips over, and he looks up at the hat going up, and the little bell rings.
So when these go out and display, people have the fun of making them all
Yeah.
move and do their thing.
Well, sure, people tend to like to touch things.
And
it's-
participate in it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really what started me. I like the idea of people doing that. But I didn't think ahead so far and to realize that you can do it on a small scale, but if you have 500 people come through,
Yes, of course,
it
I'm
ends
thinking
up,
that.
not in-
Broken.
Right.
Ends up not moving
And
anymore.
then Walt has to spend a lot of his time
Yeah.
redoing it, and then he can't always remember how he did it because it was so long ago. He's always advancing in his technology.
Oh.
Yes. And I have short-term memory.
So it's grown when they come back from these
That's right.
exhibitions, because
Right.
it means I gotta, and then you're on to 10 other things by then, of course.
That's
And so
right.
it's gonna sit in the corner of the studio.
That's
And
right.
be a non-movable sculpture.
That's right.
That's all
Right.
right, that all makes sense to me.
But one of the things I think that Walt gets pleasure in doing them is entertaining people. I think in the back of his mind there's that sense of
I'm sure.
wanting to entertain them, wanting to have them touch, actually make contact
Well-
with the person and the figure.
And the most appealing to young people as well as adults.
Right.
It'd be hard not to want to play with that. You saw that. Tell me about some of the other things that are in this studio, because this is a really interesting spot that we're in right here.
Well, there's a dollhouse right over here that made some years ago, and it was for a television commercial for Allied Van Lines, and they needed to have it in a week. Because
In a week?
They had gotten messed up with their schedule.
From blueprint to
Yeah.
finish.
Their schedule
Oh,
got
my.
messed up. And so I told them on the phone, oh, of course, I can do it in a week. I wasn't busy. I didn't have another assignment on my desk. So I accepted it right away because it was a challenging, interesting thing to do.
Had you ever made a dollhouse before?
No. So, but it's, it's it doesn't have any unique problems, except in this one I wanted a copper roof, and that took a little extra
That
time.
It's a
took lot of
magnificent-looking
time
doll.
antiquing it. And then in the middle of it, in the middle of these 5 days or so that he had to work on it, they called him on the third day and they said, "Oh, we forgot to tell you, one of the walls has to open so that the cameras can get inside."
And did you do the inside of the dollhouse?
No, just wallpaper.
He didn't furnish it at that point
But
because the agency was renting furniture. But then when we got it back, our daughter made curtains and Walt put the Christmas lights in, and
That was after
we
they-
furnished.
You know, that seems to be so true to this whole commercial life that you lead when you're doing art commercially, is that people don't realize all the real long hours and the deadlines and burnout.
Oh, we were up all night. The
Oh,
last
I bet
night,
you were
Walt
up all
didn't
night
go
and
to sleep
fun.
that last night.
I'm sure that.
I was here till 4 in the morning helping him, paste little things on. And then I went to bed thinking he was coming right over, and 6 o'clock he wasn't home. So I brought one breakfast over, and the moving van was coming at 8, and then at 7 I brought another breakfast over because I knew he wasn't going to sleep, and I wanted him to have some energy
Well,
for the
I
day.
wouldn't imagine you'd get to sleep at all producing something like that in
And
5
then he
days.
had to be there the whole day that they
At
were
the shoot,
shooting
Oh.
to supervise
Certainly.
in case anything went wrong.
So then it's all photographed for a magazine.
Well, this was for a commercial.
For
a
commercial,
television commercial.
You've done other things though that have all gone into magazines, right?
Yes. I've done three-dimensional things that don't move,
Don't
of
move.
course. And
That are in
magazines,
shadow
they're just
boxes?
Yeah, and that's for various magazines like Tennis, Golf Digest, Medical Economics, and Reader's Digest.
Well, I can see that the thing that catches everybody's heart the most, though, are these large sculptures, the kinetic ones that sort of bounce around and have a funny...
They're full of surprises. I think that's what appeals to people.
They have spirit.
First, the visual impact of it, and then you never quite know what's
they're
going to
gonna do.
happen. And then there's usually, a build-up, and then this...
Well, I really can't
climax.
stand here anymore. I want to go see some of them. So could we go look at some of
Yeah,
them?
let's see
Good,
some
let's do
more.
that.
Okay.
So here we are inside this wonderful house, which is house and museum and art gallery and a joyous place. And Naiad and Walter are going to show us some of these Valentines. First, tell me a little about the Valentines.
Well, we've been making them for about 38, I think this is the 38th year. I think it's 38. We started when we first met, and we both did little drawings then, and then we didn't intentionally mean them to be competitive, but we were trying to make each one better. And Walt started to do three-dimensional ones after a while, just sort of collages, and then they got to be boxes, and then they got to be carved out of wood. And I kind of pretty much stuck to drawings or collages or rubber stamp art. I do a lot of rubber stamp art, or combinations of all of those. And Valentine's Day is a big day for us. We plan it way in advance, and we start thinking about it in advance, and we get ideas and we work on them separately. He'll do his sculpture things over in his studio, and I'll do mine upstairs in my studio in between jobs. We'll push a job aside and try to find time to do that. And then that day, it's always a big surprise. We have an unveiling, and
so these are love tokens, back and forth.
Right.
Yeah.
And we do them for Valentine's Day and birthdays usually, and anniversaries.
They're really legendary, though. I've known about these things for years.
Really?
They've been written about, and people have talked about them, and sure they are. How come you haven't ever thought to take all of them and photograph them and put them into a book of the love tokens?
I've thought of it. In fact,
You're thinking of it
I'm
still.
still
Good
thinking
thing
of
to
it,
think
and I'm gonna
about.
that's one of my New Year's resolutions, is to
Good.
do that. We had a show a few years ago up at the Silo Gallery where we were asked if we could fill this huge gallery. And, our things are little and they're all over the house. And we started gathering them together, and we had about 121 of them, little and small, big, and boxes and everything. And it took us, I don't know how many days of truckloads to get all the stuff up there, and we filled the whole barn, every inch of
The
the
Silo is a wonderful gallery, actually, for your things, because they're so suited to that barn, the
It was
feeling.
nice. We had a very good response to them. And
I get the feeling, Naiad, that I'm like with that Duke of Edinburgh, who gave up the throne of...
King Edward.
Yes,
Right.
who gave up the throne to be with his wife of his choice.
Right, well, we don't want to
It's a great love affair here. Well, let's see some of these. We're surrounded by them, but
Okay, well,
first of all, they're not like what most people think Valentines are,
no,
right?
we don't do little hearts and flowers. A lot of them have to do with hands and hearts, because we were influenced by Pennsylvania Dutch folk art.
Oh, I
and there's
see.
a lot of that. And also we feel that the hand represents creativity and the heart represents love. And, we have a blending of both of those.
So would you say that's a theme throughout a
Not
lot of
all
the
the
work?
time.
No, it's kind of unconscious.
It's yeah, we don't
half
plan
the
it,
time.
but
It just
like-
sort of evolves and seems like a natural thing.
But
to
you
be
can
doing.
sit in any room in our house and probably look around and count maybe 5 or 10 different hands.
Yeah, I
and
have
hearts
been counting and
around.
seeing them.
Yeah.
And I have lived in Pennsylvania, and I have that feeling now.
Oh,
I
so
see
you know
the
about that.
association.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
we liked those early fractures, and we just each year we try to somehow, you don't itemize all the past ones, but you know that you do for some fresh idea. And we try, I think we probably try not to do hands and hearts, and then of course somehow or other it's incorporated into a hand and a heart. But anyhow, these are some
Okay.
that are not altogether hands and hearts. This is one that I did.
I have it,
That's
a book.
collection for a period of time, about 10 years ago. I was writing songs because I started playing the guitar and I started singing, and it just seemed natural. It just came to me, and I haven't written any in a long time, but at that point I thought this would be a nice present for Walt, and I got a blank book and I wrote them all out and put little romantic
Oh, how beautiful.
pieces in that I found.
These are wonderful.
Little
Beautiful.
angels
Ink.
and hearts. And originally I did it, maybe 15 songs or so that I had written. And then as I did new ones, I would add them from year to year.
Well, what a
And
treasure.
so
Beautiful
It just
book.
goes on.
And Naiad has beautiful calligraphy.
I see that.
She does
It's just like this musical score done in words, you know.
Anyhow, there were quite a
Has such a
few.
rhythm.
Again, it was like that show. I didn't realize I had written that many until I started writing them, putting them
It's
into
like
a
a
book.
textile almost, the writing. It's
Right.
almost like patterns, the words, if you don't think of them as words. It's absolutely beautiful.
Well, I wanted the words to have significance, and I wanted it to look good, to have
beautiful.
a
Well, how
romantic
about some of
feeling.
these larger?
And some of these are things that Walter did, like this one. It's sort of a delicate balance. Well, these spin.
It had the delicate balance of
Again,
the
here are hands
marriage.
and heart, and yes, it's like marriage, ups and downs, little dangling hearts.
And the delicate
And then
balance of it.
from this, Walt got the idea when he was starting to do lawn sculpture that this would be a nice kind of
Right, I see
device,
that.
and so he made a slightly bigger model similar to this for the lawn sculpture
That we
that's out
looked
on the
at.
lawn. And then, because at that time that I was musical, Walt made this pendant for
Wow.
me that has sort of a harp-like
From
musical.
a clockwork.
It was
Now,
from-
you asked me before if I do found objects.
Yes.
And this is an example. The gears and things were from clockworks, and I just assembled it.
So you were always looking at things. I didn't see a whole lot of junk piled up anywhere in your studio, though.
No, it's piled
Behind the-
Oh, is that where it is? I wondered.
Yeah.
Then he did well, I guess you would hold it this way. Simple hearts. Now,
Oh, I
this
think that's
actually
This was the dummy.
was the
for
form,
the-
right?
Right, for the
And
brass.
then, one year he gave me
Yeah.
the dummy, and then
That was the year I got lazy.
because he
Yeah,
he
to
didn't
get the
have-
idea from the year prior.
or he didn't have time to really finish
Had a
it.
big job that year.
and then he made this afterwards, so I really ended
And what's
up
this made
with
out
two
of,
them.
Walter?
Brass.
So you cut it then out of sheet brass?
Yeah.
Sheet of brass?
Where the jewel is soft.
Oh, it's even beautiful on both sides. I like it where it's
That's
turning.
the unpolished
I like
side,
that though.
yeah.
Shows that it's all handcrafted.
Right, and it's all smooth. You can't cut your fingers
So
on
we'll
it.
put this one in front of the camera. Well, here's some more hands. A lot of
This is a hand,
hands.
and they're all different kinds. This actually, I think, was an anniversary. It has our initial, and now
Rubber
this
stamps.
has rubber stamps all over it. Sort of happy things, suns and birds and
Musical
watches
instruments.
and horns and fish, and this has a simple kind of movement.
This reminds me of Walter,
It's
right
a
here.
ball and socket.
Well,
arrangement.
this was one of all of his do things, but this is much.
That one will tickle you though. This one.
Yep.
And it reminds me of those things people
and it's
used
got
to.
a wedding ring on it.
We're very legitimate.
Right. And then this is another hand and heart that's carved
That's beautiful.
out. This has a very Indian, East Indian feeling, I
Some of
think.
them are very elegant and some of
Yes.
them are more folksy.
Right. And
How about this box that's in the front?
that box is one of my few
3Ds?
dimensional endeavors. I found this old lunch box, and at the time I just wanted it for itself, but then when Valentine's Day came around, I found these things around the house, initials and a crown and a goldfish. There used to be a kingfish. That was the idea of
Oh, I
this.
was the kingfish?
Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
The kingfish.
His initials.
You don't feel
and the
like it
king-
now.
As opposed to
And the
sardine.
kingfish. And
Yeah.
then I decorated the inside of it with,
With little Valentine's
letters and
motifs.
yeah.
I got a
Every once in
question,
a while I
Maya.
have to repair these. Every once in a while
Oh,
the
I
glue
bet.
dries
Sure.
out. I have to go back
time.
and fix them up.
There's a few more. Here's another book. Well, it looks like a book.
That
Yeah.
one, yes.
And it says 1954 on it.
That was
Right.
the year after the...
I'm going to take the plastic off.
That's
of
an
it.
antique
Right,
Valentine.
Right.
From
And
an
what
ant-
wanna hold that? What I did with this, first of all, I made this label. I painstakingly lettered all that.
Really?
Bought a book in a flea market kind of a bookshop that was an anatomy book, and I covered it with rice paper that just happened to have heart designs on it, and then each of these diagrams comes apart. I had to cut up the book. I hated to do that, but
Oh, I see it's parts of the body, eye,
right, things open up
It's
like
an
an
early
eye.
pop-up.
pop-up book, right.
Inside is Walter. That's how he
Walter's
looked when I
face when
met
he
him.
was 20.
Right.
Just 10 years ago.
Then it says, then I wrote in these things like the eye of which you are the apple and so on. I don't want to get too personal
puns with
here,
the
but
parts of the body.
everything, right, and
Where did you do your schooling, your original art schooling?
this sort of thing, and inside you're always on my mind or
Oh,
something
how
like
wonderful.
that.
Right, where did you do your
That's when-
schooling?
Well, I went first to the High School of Music and Art
Oh,
in New
okay.
York, and then Pratt Institute.
Okay, so
But I didn't
you're an
learn-
alumni of the High School of Performing Art then.
Well, except it wasn't called that then. The performing art
Now it's
came
called
later.
LaGuardia, right?
Now it's called something totally different.
Yeah.
It's a different building and everything.
Right, but it was a wonderful old school.
But then you had gone to
when I
Pratt.
went there. Then I went to Pratt, and
What about Walter? Where did you do your schooling? Are you both New York City people?
Yes, well, close to New York. I went to Parsons School of Design and Brooklyn Museum School, just
Oh, sure.
briefly, But then
Take courses when
we,
you're a young person.
I went to the
Art Students League.
Art
didn't you?
Students League. I forget about that. I went there just a short
And then for a while we taught at Parsons.
for 7,
together.
8 years.
Walter said he enjoyed it a great deal.
We did. We both did. We loved teaching.
Loved it.
It was fun. And we would do a husband and wife thing where one would finish the other's line, and one
You
student.
should write a play, I think, together.
it was terrific.
Maybe you would get done in half the time because the two of you think the thoughts and finish each other's thoughts or
Well, we
something.
try. Yeah. Sometimes we step on each other's
Oh, I'm sure.
lines,
It'd
but
be hard not to do it. So thank you so much for telling it to me and sharing it
Well,
and
it
for
was a
just...
pleasure for us to go through those memories again,
Well,
because everything kind of fades into the walls around
I know,
here.
and life gets busy
But
too.
it's nice to, look at the things and remember the times, how it was when we created each of the things.
Well, thanks for letting me into your lives and everybody else just for this bit of time.
Thank
Well,
you. Well, it's
thank you
nice
for
to
coming.
share.